A big announcement means a big boost for LSU football in 2025. We're talking about it's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, and of course on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, please smash that like button. LSU doesn't play this weekend heading into their second open date before they get ready for Alabama, but the Tigers got significant news as defensive tackle Jacobian Guillory made it official that he will return to LSU in 2025 for a sixth season of eligibility. Guillory was a guest on the Jordy Culotta show where he made that announcement. It was something that had been rumored a few weeks back by WFB's Jacques Doucet, but Jacobian was a guest and said it first person on Jordy's show that he will in fact return to LSU for a sixth season. You know, I think this is massive news. I just want to give you a little bit of a refresher because sometimes time passes and things happen and we forget maybe context around certain things. You know, Jacobian Guillory only played a game and a half for LSU. He played the opener against SC and then was injured in the Nichols game in the second week. So we barely got to scratch the surface to see what Jacobian Guillory could have been this year for a guy that, you know, a season ago, remember, was part of a rotation. Maybe your fourth or fifth guy is part of the rotation, but behind a bunch of NFL players. Remember what he was supposed to be. You were losing Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, Jordan Jefferson, all to the NFL. The one guy with significant experience you were getting back was Jacobian Guillory. And it's not just that Guillory was a guy coming back. It's that he was playing at an exceptional level in advance of this season. I want to remind you, this is what Brian Kelly said in the spring about Jacobian Guillory.
In terms of stopping the run, Jacobian Guillory has been outstanding. I mean, he's singularly been, I think, in terms of what Bo Davis is looking for, he's been outstanding, and he's been a stalwart. We got to find the other guy, and that's what we're looking for. We're trying to develop that second guy, and then we'll have some depth guys behind him.
So that was in the spring. Brian Kelly's telling you Jacobian Guillory's outstanding. Remember, remember the context here. You're replacing Smith and Wingo and Jefferson. You've got Guillory returning, but remember, your numbers were so thin at tackle that you moved Kimo Makanayoli from offensive line to defensive line in the spring just to have numbers. And then you get into fall camp. And Brian Kelly, this cut was August the 26th. So this is the week of the USC game, the week of the season opener. Brian Kelly talking about Guillory.
He's been our best defensive tackle, our most consistent, starting with the tail end of last year, and that continued through the spring and into preseason camp. He's extremely strong, can hold the point, plays with great leverage and technique. He's really come along incredibly well in terms of the ability to use his hands and disengage and find the football. There's one thing to have strength, at the point of the tack, but if you can't find the football, okay, you just hold the point. What he's been able to do is use great strength, and now he's controlling the blocker and finding the football. What do I think we'll see? He's going to make a lot of tackles, and that's saying a lot for a defensive tackle.
So expectations were very high for Jacobian Guillory this year, and I want to remind you as well, after spring, that position, defensive tackle, was the thing Kelly said, one position you're going after in the transfer portal. It was defensive tackle. It was one must. And they did. They went and addressed it. They got Gio Paez from Wisconsin, and they got JVR Suggs from Grand Valley State. But remember, they were going after big fish. They were looking for starting caliber players in that transfer portal. They went hard after Simeon Barrow from Michigan State, who ended up at Miami. They went after Dominic Williams from TCU who landed at Oklahoma. How's that going, by the way? But anyway, the point is they were really trying to address that position because that's how thin they felt they were. And Guillory was the one guy you knew or felt like you could count on. I mean, you had Jalen Lee coming back. You had Sean Washington, the JUCO transfer. Paris Shand, who had played some inside and out, but really was more of an outside guy that could give you some inside rush. You had freshmen coming in like Ahmad Bro and Demiron Johnson and Dominic McKinley, and you moved Chemo over. But the point is, Guillory was the only sure thing that you felt like you had. And even he hadn't started many times, and he played a lot of games, but he hadn't been a starter. He certainly hadn't been the guy, the number one guy. And then there you are against Nichols in week 2, and he ruptures his Achilles. And the one guy at your biggest position of need, according to your head coach, the one guy who was your best guy goes down and he's lost for the year. Now, there was a positive, a singular positive to Jacobian Guillory's injury. And obviously, you never want to see a player get injured. I mean, that's any player at any sport at any level. But when you're talking about a guy that's a fifth-year guy who's from Alexandria Senior High, from Louisiana, who comes to LSU, who waits his turn, comes back for a 5th season. He's finally going to he's playing exceptionally well. It's his turn, and then he has that injury. It's even worse. But the one positive is it forced younger guys and other guys to grow up quickly. And, in part, the first guy who got that crack was Ahmad Bro, a true freshman, who, by the way, signed with LSU as a defensive end out of Ruston. They bulked him up. He's the guy who sort of famously said he put on all the weight to eat a bunch of Whataburger with 4 large fries. But Bro's played in 8 games. He's played 217 snaps so far. Dominic McKinley missed the early part of the season. He was the 5-star, the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, one of the top defensive tackles in the country out of Acadiana. He had the injury that kept him out for the early part of the season, but he's played in 5 games now with 78 snaps, and he's become a nice rotational piece for LSU at this point. So because there's been no Jacobian Guillory, it's forced you to get those reps and find those reps elsewhere. And yes, Gio Paez has been a big part of that. Paris Shand has been starting the last 3 games at defensive tackle. So those veteran guys have been your starters. But when you talk about your rotational guys, you have leaned on a lot of young guys who've gotten a lot of snaps. So Guillory coming back is massive. The injury sort of forced you to find other options this year. And in turn, it should benefit you long term. So I want to take a quick step aside. And when I come back, I want to talk about what that 2025 defensive line and defense as a whole looks like now that Jacobian Guillory is, in fact, going to return. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professional for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's show is also brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows the others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. So with Jacobian Guillory coming back, let's take a look at what the defensive line and the defense as a whole will look like in 2025. Of course, you know you're going to lose Gio Paez, and you're going to lose Jalen Lee and Paris Shand. Paez was a one-year guy. We knew that when he came in from Wisconsin. He had 1 year to take advantage of, and he has been a starter and a stalwart for you on the interior of your defensive line. Jalen Lee is the kid from Live Oak who started his career at Florida in that COVID year in 2020. So while he played at Florida in 2020, that year didn't count, but he has played in the minimum of 4 games each of the 4 years since. So his eligibility is expired after this season. Same with Paris Shand. Paris Shand was a freshman at Arizona in 2020, the COVID year. While that season didn't count toward anyone's eligibility, he has now played in 4 consecutive seasons after in the minimum of 4 games. So Paris Shand and Jalen Lee are out of eligibility after this season. So you're losing Paez, Lee, and Shand. Guillory comes back, and now you've got options to start alongside him. JVR Suggs, the Grand Valley State transfer, who has been a really good interior pass rusher. That's sort of been his role on this defense. Suggs potentially could emerge as a starter next to Guillory. Sean Washington, who's also been a rotational guy and still has some growth and development, but is a big defensive lineman, could be that guy. Remains to be seen what happens with Kimo Makanayoli. Does he stay at LSU? Does he stick on the defensive line? Does he transfer and try to play somewhere else? I don't know, but he hasn't played much this year. But those are the 4 veteran guys that you'll have returning. On top of that, I mentioned Ahmad Bro and Dominic McKinley, 2 freshmen this year who have played a lot of football, who look to take a pretty significant step next year. So the 4 I mentioned, those 2 freshmen, Bro and McKinley, that's 6 defensive tackles right there with experience that you have returning. Consider what we talked about coming into this year, where the only one with real experience was Guillory. And on top of that, you had seen Shand and Lee take a few reps there on the interior, but that was kind of it as far as your experience. Now, Guillory, Washington, potentially Kimo, JVR Suggs, Bro, McKinley. That's 6. Demyron Johnson's a freshman this year who appears to be in line for a red shirt, but that's 7. And then you've got 4 2025 commits at defensive tackle as well. That puts you at 11. And then there's the big wild card of Jakeem Stewart. Jakeem Stewart, the number 1 player in the country for 2026, the defensive lineman out of St. Aug, who just transferred to Edna Carr and reclassified. Still thought to be a very heavy LSU lean. If you get Jakeem Stewart, then that puts you at a dozen defensive tackles. Yes, you'll probably have some degree of attrition. Does a guy like Kimo Makanayoli or Sean Washington leave? Demyron Johnson, I don't know. I'm just looking at guys that maybe aren't playing right now. That's all guess and speculative. I'm not saying that any of them will, but that's a dozen guys I've rattled off right there, potentially available to you in the spring and in the fall for 2025. And when you've got that many bodies and options and being coached by Bo Davis, you're only going to continue to improve. It is so worth noting the quality of play of these interior defensive tackles because of Bo Davis, guys who have been around LSU who didn't perform at this level. Even a guy like Ahmad Bro, who's a defensive end who's bulked up and moved to the interior and has become a solid player because of the quality coaching he's getting. A year ago, you saw at times 3 different defensive tackle coaches when Jimmy Lindsey was there initially and got sick, and then John Jancic moved into that role, and then you brought in Pete Jenkins to help. Like, now you've got one voice and a great voice from the Pete Jenkins tree in Bo Davis. You look at that interior defensive line, we can look at what else is there. The exceptional guys on the defensive end. Guys like Gabe Relaford. I am so excited to see what Kalaj Cobbins can be. Of course, Braden Swinson will be off to the NFL draft, as will Savion Jones, so you're going to lose your ends, but you have really good young talent there. And you could always hit the portal at tackle or end for a starting caliber player. We got to see what happens with Harold Perkins if he does, in fact, go to the draft. But if West Weeks does, in fact, redshirt this year, he'll be back. along with Whit Weeks. Yes, you'll lose Greg Penn, but you got some young linebackers they're very excited about. We've seen Xavier Atkins step in. We've seen Devon Keys step in with injury here in SEC play that's only getting them more experience. And in the secondary, you're going to lose Major Burns. You're going to lose Zy Alexander. But think about everybody that you return. Another year of development under Corey Raymond. Ashton Stamps will be there. PJ Woodland will be there. No doubt you're going to hit the transfer portal. You got the number one corner in the country in DJ Pickett coming in, who should be a day one starter. Think of all the young safety talent you got. You're going to lose Sage Ryan, but you could get Jordan Gilbert back for a fifth season. And then look at the guys that have been back there like Deshaun Spears and Kylan Jackson. There's so much reason to be optimistic about the defense in year 2 under Blake Baker, because all the guys that are drinking from a fire hose right now will be a year older, a year more experienced, a year more developed, a year more skilled, a year more comfortable in this defense. Ultimately for LSU defensively to get back to what we are all accustomed to, seeing these dominant defenses, great coaching is a piece of it. And I think you have the right coaches in place, but you also have to get the elite level talent. And that elite level talent isn't there right now. So the fact that this defense is playing as well as it is and has at times this year, in spite of not having great talent, what does it look like when 5-star Dom McKinley matures? When potentially, if you get 5-star Jakeem Stewart in, when Whit Weeks becomes a junior who the game really starts to slow down for him, how scary is that? When a long corner like PJ Woodland gets more comfortable, when you bring in 5-star DJ Pickett, when Deshaun Spears becomes a veteran player in that secondary, yes, you can start to see a defense that more closely resembles what LSU, and we have all become accustomed to LSU looking like over many, many years. But a big piece of it for 2025 is getting Jacobian Guillory back into the fold. That's fantastic news for Brian Kelly. LSU doesn't play a game this weekend here with the open date, but they got a big win with getting Jacobian Guillory back in the fold for 2025. Okay, that'll do it for us here on today's bonus edition of Locked on LSU. If you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.